how do I fix my tight hamstrings?
Oh, this is a common one. This is an age-old
I don't
question.
tell me because mine have been tight my whole life, dude. I want to know.
Well, it's interesting with you. I mean, man, there's so much with this.
Just cut them off.
I mean, cut them off. Man, we kind of talked about this, I think on the last Q&A, we kind of talked about hip flexors.
Yeah, we did.
So, but hamstrings is an interesting one because a lot of people think, so if we think the hamstrings, most of the primary hamstrings are biarticulate, meaning they cross the hip and the knee. So a lot of people think that they're tight all day, but they're not even sitting in a shortened position really when you're sitting at a desk most of the day. They're not as shortened as some other tissues. So people think I just need to yank on them and stretch them. And I think because there's the big sciatic nerve there's a lot of people that feel this tension, this feedback. So they just want to kind of stretch it away. When, we kind of talked about with the hip flexors, there's a lot, you probably don't need to yank and stretch them all the time to fix them. There could be the position of the pelvis. A lot of times also your hamstrings just could be really weak. They just not be strong. Yep. They're not comfortable being at length. And it's interesting that, you say for your whole life, but I find a lot too, there's a lot of neural tension that people have in their hamstrings. It's we talked about there's this fascial line that goes from the arch of the foot all the way up, cross through the hamstrings, all the way up through the back, all the way up into the head, into the back of the eyes. And this fascial line, when people have like back pain or back tightness, I find that they oftentimes have really, really tight hamstring because they're almost like guarding from that position. So there's a lot to consider with it.
So what would you do to fix it?
Yeah, I think that the interesting part is just to be aware of what you just said. It might not be like, when you say tightness, what do you mean?
Yes.
Right?
Lack of range of motion, a feeling of tension, discomfort, pain. Like, what does that mean to you?
So if you lay down on your back, so you're supine, right? Belly up.
Yeah.
Legs are straight out in front of you, and you kept your back, again, so with a natural pelvic tilt, right? Your back's, let's call it flat on the floor.
Yeah.
Right? Arms out to the side or whatever. And you kept your knees straight and you lift that foot straight up, right? And you're trying to bring it as you're imagine it's going up towards the ceiling and you're coming almost to like a 90-degree angle at the hip.
Yeah.
Trying.
Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
Right? How close to 90 degrees can you get it? And can you move it beyond that? Right? So what does that mobility look like? What's your body's ability to move that leg or that limb through that range of motion?
That you can control.
Yeah. So that's, again, you're actively moving it with your muscles. So again, go back to like hip flexors. You're flexing into that position. That mobility, like what are you feeling when you get there? Are you feeling like a restriction? Or in that being like, there's just a barrier there that you cannot move that thing any further? And is that coming, like, are you feeling that through the back of your leg? Is it through the back of your knee? Is it down closer into the calf?
Is it in your hip?
Is it in your hip? Where is that restriction happening? So that's like an active way of kind of, maybe evaluating like, where are you feeling this quote unquote tightness? Because I think a lot of this comes from like, you feel like you have tight hamstrings. The other way, like if you just stood up and then, straight knees, feet flat on the floor, and then just kind of folded forward and let your body hang down into that position, what's going on? Like how close does your chest get to your knees or not get in my case? Like, and where is that tightness coming from that you're feeling through the back? And a lot of times, like you assume that it's the hamstrings that need to let go so that you can get that chest closer to your knees or flat to your thighs. But it might not be that at all. It could be coming from maybe higher up in the chain. Maybe it's your back that's in where in your back? Is it your lumbar spine? Is it your thoracic spine? That's limiting you there. So I think understanding like, what is it about your hamstrings that you think is tight?
Yeah.
Because you may not be able to get into these positions. It might not be because of your hamstrings at all. It could be because something else, and you just happen to be feeling that weak point in the chain. Or, there's a lot of muscle there. That runs through that, and it attaches to a lot of other things. And so that feedback mechanism is like, oh, tight.
The other thing I was thinking of is, what type of shoes are you wearing? Even if you're a male or a female. So, are your shoes being restrictive as far as around your toe box, or is there an elevated heel on them? Or are you wearing really hard soled shoes like men's dress shoes or women's flats? Because that can also give you symptoms of tight hamstrings at the end of the day.
Right, because basically, if you're used to, this goes back to our shoe question, like our zero drop shoes. If you're walking around in a if you're walking around in an elevated heel all day long, whatever your dress shoes are, whether that's, you're a male or female, you're wearing whatever type of shoes you're wearing and it's elevated. And then you walk into a flat shoe, like your zero drop shoe to work out in, you're just basically you were in a shortened position all day long with that elevated heel. And now you're in a shortened or a lengthened position because you've just taken that lift out of your shoe, so to speak. So where is that coming from? Is that coming from the ankle, which is then attached to the ham? Like we start looking at Achilles, which is attached to the hamstrings, which is then attached to the low back, which is attached to the pelvis, right? When you were at that elevated heel, you were likely maybe tilting those hips a little bit to find that balance, maybe softening the knee a little bit. So there's a lot that goes into this that it's not necessarily the hamstrings that are tight.
I was just going to tell you a story. So last weekend, I'm redoing my condo because I'm going to get it ready to sell. I was having a friend over and we were demoing the kitchen and stuff like that. And, at the end of the day, I was wearing my normal tennis shoes that I always wear. And my hamstrings and my ass were so sore. And I was like, God, what did I do? I didn't do anything different than what I normally do. I just went over and, we were moving things around. But it was the concrete.
Yeah.
I was standing on concrete for hours more so than I generally do because here at the gym, we have padded floors.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what it was.